Well, then why don't you call Congress back into session instead of running like a coward away from the Epstein files? We have the tragic incident that took place, I believe it was Wednesday. And we're going to talk about Republicans' prayers. You see, Donald Trump has built his brand around Christianity. This is why it's very important to understand this is about Christian nationalism. This is exactly what is happening in this country right now. They're trying to push this where we had the Trump Bible. We had where Oklahoma was trying to put Bibles in schools. We had all of this going on. Okay. We also saw where Texas, for example, put the 10 Commandments into class. But you see, if you're a true Christian or someone who has read the Bible and understand Jesus' teachings, you would understand Jesus was against very flashy Christianity, right? He talked about the Sadducees and the Pharisees that would get up on a platform and preach loudly. And he said, those men have already received their reward. Now, I don't mean to turn this into a Sunday sermon, but a lot of what is happening on the Republican side is, quite frankly, a lot of virtue signaling. It's preying upon their religious base. So this is similar to what we're seeing, but they've now taken the thoughts and prayers and cranked it up to 100. They're now playing on thoughts and prayers and legitimately thinking that prayers will solve our issues. Listen, I'm all for praying. We should absolutely put these families in our prayers. Sure. But prayers do not solve this. And when Republicans have a trifecta in Congress and the presidency, they can do a hell of a lot more than just praying. Don't let that get lost in the weeds. They can say thoughts and prayers. If a Democrat were in office, I understand that, where they have nothing they can do, but they can do anything they want to do if they so will it. Don't let that get lost in translation. They have a trifecta. Congress has already said they will do whatever Donald Trump asks them to do. We've seen state legislatures. By the way, today, Texas finalized their map. States are willing. So again, when we hear the thoughts and prayers, spare me the thoughts and prayers and show me your action. Your actions speak louder than words. So let's get into stories now that I'm off of my high horse here. So Scott Jennings said, it's not just wrong, but cruel to tell people of faith that their prayers ring hollow amid a tragedy like this. There are parents in Minneapolis tonight who are likely praying harder for comfort than they've ever prayed in their lives. They're never going to be the same. You know what I would do as a parent? I don't want to hear my representative say, hey, sir, I understand that your child was affected by this, but don't worry, we're going to pray for you really hard. That's not what I want to hear. What I want to hear is that you're going to take action to prevent another tragedy like this from happening. So yes, it does ring hollow. We then see Sean Hannity saying these are preventable. The first thing you should do, every school in the country should have a metal detector. You have to control the entry of kids and the perimeter around every school. The left's rush race to blame guns for every tragedy is sad and pathetic. What's sad and pathetic is inaction. What's sad and pathetic is trying to make our schools look like a penitentiary. I want to be very clear here. I am not someone who is going to sit here and advocate for completely abolishing firearms. But let's be very clear. What we need to do is we need mental health screenings. We need red flag laws. We need waiting periods. If there are any kind of attachments that we deem that would increase safety, sure, ban those attachments then. What we also need to have is if there's any loopholes, repeal those loopholes. What we need is we need stronger enforcement here. I understand that a lot of my policy positions would not stop them all, but there's no amount of legislation that you will propose that will stop it. And what Republicans are advocating for is they're advocating for nothing they are advocating for. So which policy position is likely to help reduce it? Probably the one that is being advocated for something to be done other than thoughts and prayers. We then see Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey just calling for a statewide and federal ban on assault weapons. Who's with him? I'm going to give you my liberal take on this, okay? I've already said my policy position is that we should do more to stop these. We should try to build up the security in our schools, granted, right? For example, we saw that in Uvalde, one of the biggest issues there was that they did not have mesh wiring in their windows. And so meanwhile, the perpetrator was able to get through by simply, again, shooting out those particular windows. Let's put windows that are much stronger. For example, we saw in this incident, by the way, stained glass windows. The perpetrator did not even make entry into the church. Okay? And here it is, Homeland Security saying, pray without ceasing. Again, they are now making a mockery at this point, saying, just pray. Just pray, guys. It'll all resolve itself if you just simply pray. No, legislative action is what solves issues. Community helps solve issues. And you can see here, Mike Johnson saying at the end of the day, the problem is not guns. The problem is the human heart. It's mental health. Mike Johnson. Well, then why don't you call Congress back into session instead of running like a coward away from the Epstein files? Keep in mind, Mike Johnson called Congress, told Congress, we're going to leave early. We're going to recess early because I don't want this to be released. How about you call Congress back? How about you actually do legislative actions? But Mike Johnson won't do that. We then see where Secretary Kristi Noem is awarding over $110 million to more than 600 quote unquote faith-based organizations and nonprofits across the country. Here's the thing about this. Who's going to receive this funding? We already know they have instituted things like the Muslim travel ban, for example. So will this go to Buddhist temples? Will this go to synagogues? Will this go to Muslim worship centers? Will it go to these areas? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Or will this be divvied up based on what they view as worthy of these funds? That's the question you have to ask yourself, especially when it comes to government funding. We've already seen this, by the way. When we look at what happened with the rural health funding, the rural health funding was going to Texas, and it was a blank check for Texas to use as they see fit. By the way, it's the same thing that we would see with the Department of Education. We talk about the Department of Education. They wanted to get rid of it and just hand down to the states a basic grant that they are able to use however they see fit. So this doesn't solve anything. And you can see here, Speaker Mike Johnson saying, Democrats mocking the power of prayer in the wake of tragedy is so disgraceful. It's hard to even summon words to describe. Millions of Americans know prayer brings strength in our darkest moments. For politicians to belittle faith to score cheap points shows just how out of touch they are. No, you're out of touch. And what Gavin Newsom said was James 2:14. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Has no deeds. You see, Mike Johnson can absolutely call Congress back. They have a trifecta. It would be nothing for them to be able to pass any kind of legislation. Ask yourself why Republicans are not calling Congress back into session. So again, what we look at with this is that this is an absolute tragedy. What happened? Prayers, there's certainly a need for prayers. I understand that. As a Christian, I understand that the power of prayer. I understand that deeply. But Republicans here are pandering. It's the same reason that they called up a child with brain cancer to Trump's first speech to Congress. Went up there, put him up on a pedestal, and used him as a political prop. This is what Republicans do. They know that their base is radically right Christians. And so they feed that base with virtue signals. Again, I ask you, Republicans in Congress have a trifecta. There is the presidency, they have Congress, they can pass nearly anything that they'd want to do. Why are they not doing so? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification bell to get notified of all future videos. And I hope you watch the next video. Thank you so much.